I want to talk a little bit more about where PATs sit in terms of adoption. What are the biggest barriers currently facing PAT adoption? And I'm curious to hear from whoever wants to start how much you think risk aversion plays a role in stalling of PATs in process development and adoption. Tom, you're on my screen. Did you want to speak to that at all?
From my experience here at Emoja, we're working with LVV-based gene therapies. So we're looking just to determine the safety and efficacy in these phase 1 trials. So we plan to start assessing these potential CQAs that we could eventually develop or identify technologies to measure those or the critical process parameters. But really, we're looking at the different lots to understand, what are those physical properties of the particle that is creating a safe and efficacious product. As an early stage company, the thing that we have to balance is that PAT initiative priority with the speed that we talked about earlier. Because we're early, we want to go fast also into commercial because it's a novel modality. And so the PAT is kind of maybe put into that mix of what's the important thing to spend our time and money on. And so we struggle with that. So our risk is not in the implementation, but of the prioritization relative to the other aspects of an early phase startup company.
Got it. Thank you. Anybody else want to talk about the risk aversion and/or where PATs are generally sitting in terms of adoption and what barriers are in their way?
Yeah, maybe I can describe and jump on the fact that whenever there is an established process, right, in manufacturing and supply, it is very difficult to have the return on investment for implementing a specific PAT system because of several factors, and I would stay general here, right? But so as I said, there is an ultimate goal from the pharma industry to move towards real-time release, continuous manufacturing, and all of that is enabling, and PAT is an enabler of all of this, ambition, right? But when it comes to the legacy product that already have established processes, right, then the PAT solution should bring high value return on investment in order to have the right use cases for implementation. And implementing a simple PAT like a pH probe or single sensor can become easier than implementing a Raman with a transform AI machine learning signal into the production. And you can understand the different complexity between the simple sensors, direct measurement, and the complex spectrum with a transformed algorithm, right? And therefore, the barriers are on different topics, right? On different type of functions, right? For sure, complexity in regulatory changes, right? In order to have the equivalency demonstrated between the legacy and the new PAT process. So regulatory expectation, quality control equivalencies, right? We have now a potential PAT online that removes all of the QC, but then in that case, it's continuously monitoring the batch. And therefore, we need to compare this continuous distribution of measurement versus a one-off sample at the end of the batch, right? So this difference in equivalency is also a potential barrier. Then obviously, there are prerequisites that are critical in terms of digital architecture, right? Because in order to have PAT truly embedded into the manufacturing process, the signal must, and the output of the PAT must be integrated into either an MES, a delta V, a LIMS, in order to control the process, right? And to establish the fact that the process is under continuous manufacturing. So the digital architecture, the data flow is also an important aspect, right? And then least but not last, the fact that operations and QC, who are normally the the principal actors of the traditional QC offline sampling and testing should evolve in their roles in order to be accountable for the PAT online measurement, calibration, and potential drift during the process steps. So there are several functions that are involved, and I would not say that these are barriers, but all of that must be taken into account for the return on investment use case and compare with the true benefits of this real-time release and continuous manufacturing ambition.
Thank you, Luc. I did want to remind the audience that we have a Q&A box open for you to submit questions to our panelists. We'll try our best to answer as many as possible throughout the hour. I just saw one come in from Chris. Chris asks, is the main challenge demonstrating that PATs are capable of adequately representing CQAs such that it can be used to control process rather than requiring process constraints enabling real-time release? Does anybody want to take a crack at Chris's question?
I can tell me about this question. I think the PAT implementation can enhance the process monitoring and control. For the releasing, we should have a releasing testing once the batch being complete. For the PAT implementation, also, when you think about PD should be done, thoroughly study, establish CPP or KPP, then ensure, because we know the process is the products. So once the process is well developed, PAT implemented real-time monitoring controlled, so the products, purity, quality, efficacy, even identity, safety, everything should be within preset acceptance criteria. So I would say PAT definitely is a very powerful tool to enhance process monitoring and control, particularly for continuous bioprocessing. Now you see for upstream perfusion is getting more and more favored to enhance productivity, product quality, consistency. Downstream continuous process, so PAT implementation play a critical role. I had a very positive view about this PAT application. Also, we should give kudos to the vendors. You can see so many vendors develop new technology and help biotech companies to implement this technology. So yeah, thank you. Thanks to all those kind of vendors and the technologies for the bioprocess development and manufacturing. I would say great topic today. Yeah.
Thank you, Richard. Heather, would you mind? Oh, sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. I was just thinking about that. That question's really quite interesting. I'm wondering if there's any examples we have about real-time release being implemented, or is it just for control and monitoring of the process?
So when we say real-time release, right? When we say real-time release, there are two categories of QC testing, right? There are what I did separate are the manufacturing process monitoring, that are really to understand the process, right? And they are part of the operations, battery code, not truly embedded into the submission file, right? These are the traditional manufacturing for process monitoring. And then there is the second category, which is what we call the in-process control and QC release. And these ones are within the submission file and must be taken differently in terms of regulatory strategy. Right? So to answer your question, I would say that in the manufacturing monitoring part, definitely whenever there is a PAT embedded into a process step, then we can remove all of the offline and sample and testing. Right? When we are in the category of IPC and QC release, IPC is a potential. There are potential to remove that because it's the final answer would be on the CQA with the final release testing, right? So these are the three levels of difficulties that I'm aware of. And IPC is maybe easier than QC release.